Avenue Baptist Church and a graduate of Winona High School, were the first recipients of the baccalaureate degree in African American Studies in America. It was conferred upon him at the University of Minnesota. He was then awarded a fellowship to study at Syracuse University and was granted the Master of Arts degree in American History. His doctorate of philosophy in history was granted by the University of Pittsburgh in American history, with emphasis on African Americans and the U.S. labor movement in the 20th century. Dr. Huntley was taught at the State University of New York in Oswego, Syracuse University, the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, the University of Pittsburgh, and the University of Alabama at Birmingham. He developed the minor in African American Studies at UAB, and for more than 30 years offered a series of courses in the experiences of Africans of the diaspora. In addition, Huntley has served as an Alabama Humanities Foundation Scholar on the Mayor's Census Count Committee, on the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute Task Force, a founding member of the BCRI, a past board member of the National Urban League, and on the Birmingham Historical Commission. He served as the producer of the radio station WATV's morning talk show, Open Mic. Dr. Huntley's scholarly work includes 2 volumes based upon the oral history project at the BCRI. They are Foot Soldiers for Democracy, The Men, Women, and Children of the Birmingham Civil Rights Movement, and Black Workers' Struggle for Equality in Birmingham, both published by the University of Illinois Press. In addition, he published a master option trader's journey, From Pipe Shop to Wall Street, The Life and Times of Terry Harris, as well as The Nerve Juice and the Ivory Tower, Confrontation in Minnesota, The True Story of the Muriel Hall Takeover. Dr. Huntley is married to the former Barbara Young, the father of 2 wonderful children, Marcus and Falana, and grandfather of 5, including Lindsay, Lauren, Camilla, Zariah, and Karia. Ladies and gentlemen, our very own Dr. Horace Huntley.
Well, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you, Reverend Parrish. I didn't expect you to read all of that stuff, but I
Wasn't nearly enough.
you got through it. Well, first of all, I want to thank God for having me in this position and putting it on your mind that you would invite me to come in to talk with you. Deacon Timothy Brown, called me a couple weeks ago and said there was something on his spirit that he needed to talk with me about. And he went on to talk. I said, well, I'm in. So we decided that it was necessary to start talking about our history. This being Black History Month, it is obvious that we had to do it this month. But I've been in the mindset that we should celebrate Black history, but not just in the month of February, which is the shortest month of the year. So we have decided to at least start this process, and Deacon Harris was agreeable enough to allow us to come to this class and start it right here. I have been writing poetry and studying history, researching history, and I have a lot that I've done with that. And I'm in the process right now of writing a book, publishing a book with those materials in it. So I'll be using some of that material as we go along. This poem that I'm going to use today, it's a poem about Africa. In fact, it's entitled Black History. And what I want to do is to let you see the sojourn that we have taken from Africa to the New World. Many times when we start to talk about our history, we think that it's really nothing involved. When I first got back home, I was talking with a cousin of mine. He asked me, well, what do you teach? I said, I teach Black history. He said, oh, you can do that in about a half hour, can't you? But what most people are not aware of, this is not a new field. There's a lot of research that has gone, and so you go back to Du Bois, George Washington Williams, many other scholars who prior to the turn of the 20th century were studying black history and putting it out there. Du Bois did a study on black folk in Philadelphia, the first sociological study of black people in this country. And of course he did his mammoth work on Reconstruction, called Black Reconstruction. And of course, when he did that one in the 1930s, those folk that were professors in Yale and Harvard and the Ivy League institutions did not accept it as being valid. However, it has lived a life, and it has become one of the key pieces that we use when we talk about Reconstruction. So what I want to do is to show you that when we start to talk about black history, it is not just those amazing feats that are taken, but it's what we do every day. When you're talking to people, I always told my classes, one of the first things you should do is get you a tape recorder and tape a conversation with the oldest person in your family.
Amen.
That is history of your family. And that's what we need to continue to do. So I had started, based upon my historic profession, started to write poetry and documents on the black experience. In addition to that, it is also important to note that I also wrote poetry on history, but poetry on our family history as well. My wife, Barbara, she encouraged me to do practically everything that I've been able to do in my life since, well, for 60 years anyway. And I have written poems for her, and I'll share some of those with you as well as we go through this process. But let me get to this piece on Africa. It's entitled Black History. And in there, I'll talk about a few issues that would be very, very important for that sojourn that we have taken. I'll make a brief statement on ancient Africa. I'll talk about African kingdoms, migration within Africa, which is important, how the various religions looked upon Africans and their as people and as their religion. What would the future of Africans be if that incursion of Europeans had not taken place in Africa? I'll talk about that as well. The meaning of slavery. And that is very important because slavery meant something different in the African context than it would in the American context. The arrival in the New World, the triangle of trade, the Middle Passage, attempts to gain our freedom. And we find that some African people were able to escape and return to Africa. We don't hear a lot about that, but they returned to Africa. Now, not many, but there were some. So I simply give you that little outline because I think it's important for you to follow me. Afterwards, we'll just open it up and have some discussion about what I've presented to you. Again, thank you for inviting me to this class and putting up with me for a few minutes. The poem reads as such. Our early days were very great, but from some there has been nothing but hate. We were kings, queens, and the grassroots. Even in the Sahara, we gathered plush fruits. The many dynasties of overwhelming success leaves no doubt that we were the best during the days of ancient civilizations when Egypt apparently lost its location. we left the East and moved south and west. No doubt about it, that was a test of courage, persistence, and fortitude too. These are examples for me and for you. In our religion, they call us pagan, and for our souls, they all were craving. This was true for Muslims and Christians as well. All we got out of the deal was a continued hell. Everyone knows of Ghana, Mali, and Songhay, but how many are aware of Maasai, Benin, and Ashanti? All great peoples of West Africa who were ancestors of all of us. We were gathered up like hogs and cattle. The fact that we were human did not matter. The greed of a few changed our reality into a nightmare of redundancy. In the dismal days of the slave trade, some thought that they were well paid, but because of a difference in the meaning of terms, we fell for the okie-doke and got burned. Arriving on the east coast of America, who knows, we could have been on Jupiter. Those strange scents we were not accustomed to, arriving at the height of the morning dew. The triangular trade proved quite horrible, for all involved encountered much sorrow. The Middle Passage was a second breath on a voyage that often ended in death. But rise again we would do, on the sea and on the land too. We would mutiny and sail back home to the coast of Africa that was our own. Most were not so fortunate to escape the seamless net of captivity and slavery, where transformed we would be. Many were lucky not to be touched physically by this awful crutch. We remained in the motherland, successfully passing on the work of our clan. If we had only known, our pride, dignity, and greatness would not have been blown, for we would have certainly retained our fame and more than likely still know our name. Thank you so much. That is the poem. And as I say, this is in 12 verses, and I thought it was important to do that because some people will use poetry and understand it. And I guess it's like the kids who do the rap. You know, I remember once when I was in Minneapolis, we started to teach math and other things through rap. And the kids picked it up just like that. Yeah. So it's important. The different methods of teaching is vitally important. I'm going to stop there, and if there are any questions or comments, I'll be glad to entertain.
I have one question. Being in the history field and being a part of an organization that's concerned about black history, do you all think it's necessary to go to Montgomery and tell that governor of ours to put CRT in the school system and quit saying that it's going to hurt white kids? And it's not going to hurt them because they already know about it. But my thing is the fact that black kids nowadays don't want to know the history. I've got 9 grandkids and 2 great-grandkids. And when they walk in my study, everything I've ever accomplished is on the wall. But you do know not one time do they ask, Granddaddy, what is this? And I try my best to make sure they know where I came from. And that's the cotton fields of Mississippi.
That's a good point. Let me just say something about it. I think one of the reasons that our children are not interested in what we have done and where we've come from is because at the end of the civil rights movement, so to speak, not the end, but after we had turned many of those laws over and desegregation came into being, many of us decided that we wanted to protect our children by not telling them the story. And that was obviously a mistake. So we have to tell that story, and that is why this is so important. We have to continually tell that story. And once we start continually telling them that story, they will gather, because they don't appreciate what we've done. They don't appreciate what you accomplished. And the reason they don't appreciate it because we didn't tell them what you had to go through to get there.
Amen. I got one of them.
I just wanted to say right quick, because I raised my hand. I just wanted to say, yeah, I know. I just wanted to say, it's really such a shame, with specific regard to that racist agenda where you're saying that you're shaping and warping the minds of kids. You all remember that I've been living in Miami, between Miami and New York for the past 24 years. And when DeSantis came into office, he started this rhetoric about, shaping the minds, how CRT warps minds. And I find it so interesting because I can remember seeing photos of white kids marching in Ku Klux Klan rallies. They would march in the Ku Klux Klan rallies and be wearing the full dress, the bed sheets, white little kids. And I've seen photos actually on the cover of a rap album and the rap album was for a group called Dead Prez. They had a photo of white folks at a picnic. Y'all know what a picnic is.
Yes.
That's why we have barbecues and cookouts. We don't go to picnics because N-word is where you get the word picnic.
Yes.
But you see white folks at a picnic with a black man hanging from a tree. His body has been mutilated and burned, and little white kids are standing there. So now what I don't understand is with this argument that they're making against, and I don't even call it critical race theory, I call it the truth.
That's right.
What I don't understand is why it was okay for little white kids. Oh, and another thing, I've seen pictures of toddlers, 3 and 4-year-old black children with cotton sacks around their backs because they got to work to get the share in that sharecropping mess. Why is it okay for little kids to suffer these atrocities, participate in them, and in some instances perpetuate them, but it's not okay for them to learn about it? See, we can learn a lot from the Germans. The Germans, for every Nazi family that was taken from their household, there is a marker on that house or on the sidewalk. There's a marker saying who lived there, when they were taken, where they were gone. There are markers all over Germany that tell the story of what happened to the Jews under Hitler's regime. So what I don't understand is how come we can't face our history? And as long as we don't face that history, as long as we don't face that truth, we will continue to relive it. We will continue to perpetuate and recreate the circumstances that gave rise to it. And another thing, as I mentioned Hitler in Germany, I also don't understand. We hear so much, and it speaks about the devaluing of black life in the United States and in the West. We hear so much about what Hitler did to the Jews, and I'm not saying anything about that. Hitler killed 6 million Jews. What about Leopold, who killed 20 million Africans? We don't talk about that.
The value of black life.
Yes, sir.
And that is the difference in the way that we have created. We often see now the sign that says Black Lives Matter, and many people look at that in a negative sense.
Yes, sir.
What Black Lives Matter is saying is that Black Lives Matter. Whereas the society up to this point has basically said that Black lives did not matter. Now they're saying, well, not Black lives matter, all lives matter. All lives have always mattered. but black lives are not included in that. Yeah.
I
All
was,
lives don't suffer the same way black lives.
raise my hand.
There you go.
Good morning, you all.
Good morning.
To all of those people out there in TV land, or Zoom land. The young man that was talking a few minutes ago he is our minister of Christian education. He didn't introduce himself, but he's a scholarly young man. We love him. His name is Wendell Parrish. He's a Tuskegean. And he's doing a wonderful job here. I think he's been here for almost a year now. 2 years. So we thank him very much for coming in and working with us. And I also want to thank our teacher, Brother Harris. This class is named after him. Brother Harris has been in this class for 50 years.
No, I'm not that old.
In church.
No, it's been close to 40 years.
There's one thing I want to bring out. Doc brought up some interesting things this morning. This class is supposed to be one where everybody can learn, so I want to share this with you right quick. I went to Fairfield Industrial High School, segregation Jim Crow. Didn't know all of the things that were going on, but one thing that they did at Fairfield High School, we had a lady named Lula Aberhard, and we had black history. And I'm talking about in the 50s, 60s. It was a book. I forgot the name of the book. Me and Doc had wrote it down. We had a black history book. Black history was taught at our high school. You had to take 2 years of it. Regardless of whether you were trade or academic, you had to take 2 years of black history. And it was the thing that he brings out that I want you all to understand what Reverend Parrish and Doc had brought out is, now, segregated schools, they didn't care. Watch me now, watch, I want y'all to help me with this. They didn't care if they taught us black history. They didn't care if they taught us black history. Why? Because at that time, we wasn't going to go no further than that. The Voting Rights Act hadn't been passed, we still were segregated, we still living in ghettos. So they didn't care what kind of history you had. It wasn't going to be taught at white schools. We won't ever get there. But it was taught at our black schools, and a lot of other black schools in the country had it too. But they wasn't sweating it then, because we don't go nowhere but us. God works in mysterious ways, don't he? Now they don't want nobody to hear. Next thing I want to share with y'all, the first part of, I hope y'all listen to Doc's poem. He was talking about something that I want this class to come to grips with. I believe the Garden of Eden wasn't in Mesopotamia. I'm not a Western civilization type person. I'm prejudiced. I think it was in Africa. Because everything that you look at, her name was Lucy, the oldest lady. Everybody descended from a black woman out of Africa. They had to come up from somewhere. About 2 years ago, I was studying a thing, and I ran across, I want you to listen to this closely, because in his poem, he talked about us coming out of Africa. Over in England now, England is way over there in Europe, right? They was in a cave. They dug down there and found a skeleton. I think it was 20,000 years old, they dated it. So they were able to do all kind of things with it. The name of this skeleton was Cheddar Man. Anybody on the phone and anybody on Zoom, look up Cheddar Man. Read everything you can about Cheddar Man. But to make this short, black folks out of Africa, watch what they did when they did the DNA thing on Cheddar Man. And they did a picture of it. They went over there and they put everything on it. Guess what Cheddar Man looked like? He had long hair, skin was black as the ace of spades, and blue eyes. You see that mixture out of Africa. You see the mixture. So what we hear and what Doc is saying and what Reverend is saying this morning, we're going to talk some black history. They said from the rooty to the tootie.
Well, it's interesting that you raise that, because there are still, so when you talk about where Lucy was found, where the Garden of Eden would have been in between the Tigris and the Euphrates. There's a guy that I absolutely,
That's Africa.
right, that's African. And thank you, that's what I'm saying. That would have been Africa, not necessarily Mesopotamia as it is today. And it's only because of one thing, and that's called continental drift.
Thank you.
Continental drift. If you look at a map of the world, you'll see that especially between where the Atlantic flows, you'll see that it kind of fits together like puzzle pieces. And so it's funny, when submarines were invented, when we had to map the oceans, that's when we discovered that we're not sitting on a mass of land, we're actually sitting on massive islands. That's what the continents are, massive islands. And at the base of those islands is lava flow. And so because we're on a twirling sphere, centripetal force pushes what's on the outside of the sphere apart. The Earth is not round, it's actually oval. So I'm not trying to get into all the physics and geology and all of that stuff, but I want us to understand that the way that the map looks now is not the way that the map would have looked when human beings, at the advent of human beings. It would not have looked that way. So then you can have one person that would have those blue-eyed and long-haired features. And to your credit, the Aborigines in Australia and in New Zealand, the Aborigines are dark-skinned people with long hair and blue eyes.
It just shows that Africans are everywhere.
Yes, sir.
And all of us descended from the African continent. And that is what is being stated. That is one of the things that they don't want us to know. Yeah. And the question that you raised about going to the Capitol and telling the governor, you know, I understand your sentiment, and I agree with you, but I think that probably wouldn't assist our governor, because she doesn't know anything about what you're talking about. And she is basically following those folk who are illiterate and dumb in regards to us. So, but you're right, we need to make that known. And there are a number of ways that we can do that. And I think that's what is happening now.
And that's what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm. So, and we have to continue. Yes, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just resting my arm like that. I was paying attention.
Any other comments or questions?
I have a comment and a question. I've been to Tuskegee quite a few times. I had a chance to view the statue where the veil of ignorance was lifted from the slaves. I ventured to ask my students when I was teaching, what was the veil? Is it self-explanatory that he was removing ignorance, but the ignorance was who they are? Or what was the ignorance? That said, the veil of ignorance. So you Tuskegee to tell me what the veil of ignorance is and what it's about.
You don't have to go to Tuskegee to figure out about this. In Washington, D.C., they have, you can get these excursions you can go on. Well, they got one that's a black excursion. And my wife and I and her club had a chance to go, and it's ran by black people. They take you to black areas in Washington, like Frederick Douglass House, his museum, the original civil rights place. Is a park that they take you to. In that park, that same statue that's at Tuskegee is in the park, but guess who's raising the burden of ignorance and breaking the chain? Abraham Lincoln. It's the same identical park. So the veil and the chain, those are symbolic things. The veil, to me, when I was down there, the only reason I looked at that veil and the chain was it was a fight. I was raised in the 60s. Doc, Bro Harris, we were raised in, we had no other way of knowing where we were going to be today. Keep that in mind. That was a blank slate. So we can look at the veil of ignorance, but the veil of ignorance wasn't put on us because we were ignorant. That bill was, that to me, that was the way that they was trying to keep me keep me down.
That's a good point, very good point. They were attempting to keep
Let
us
me
in a
raise one
position.
more issue.
Okay.
In my reading about the veil of ignorance last night, Du Bois raised an issue about the veil of ignorance. We might want to comment on what was Du Bois' objection.
Go ahead.
I'm not even joking.
Okay, okay.
Before I even answer any questions about that, I need to say this one thing. My job at the university was to work with the parks department and to do tours of the university. So kind of studied the history of Tuskegee as much as I studied my lessons. People don't know that W.E.B. Du Bois taught at Tuskegee.
Yes.
He was Booker T. Washington sought him out when he became one of the first PhD from Harvard in 1895. Booker T. Washington brought him to Tuskegee to teach. So now what we have is kind of like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X.
Okay.
It's a different approach and a different strategy to black uplift. Booker T. Washington's mode was to educate the black masses. And what is the way to educate the black masses? For him, the most practical and quickest, the most direct route to do that was through trades. That's why I'm so proud of Tuskegee, because it was completely self-sufficient.
Sure was.
We made our own buildings, we made our own carpet, we did all of our own textiles, we did all of our own woodwork, we made our own bricks, we built our own kilns. Every morning we ate our own eggs, our own sausage, our own bacon. Everything was made right there at the university. And so Booker T. Washington saw that as the way for black people to pull themselves up from slavery, which is the title of his autobiography. Okay. So that was so important to him. Yes, sir.
I was saying that when I was at Syracuse, I had the opportunity to meet Shirley Graham Du Bois, and she had a little book so big, and she pulled it out, and at that point in my studies, we really always said that we had read everything in that particular area, and we thought we had. And she asked me, how many of us had seen that book? None of us had seen it. And it was a book that was co-authored by Washington and Du Bois. And I had never seen it before, and I have not seen it since. But there was always this friction between Washington and Du Bois, and between Malcolm and Mark. But to whose advantage?
Thank you.
Is that to have that division? It's not to our advantage. So those folks who control media basically decided there are certain things and certain people that we should not have access to, or not know the whole story. And that was her point. She said that, there were difference in philosophy and all, but the kind of difference that has been portrayed across the spectrum, she said that simply did not exist in that sense.
One thing that you all who's listening and on Zoom today, we sure thank you all for joining us. One thing that we want you to do is to participate in this discussion. Dr. Hunter has a lot of material he's going to bring to us. And you see our other distinguished two scholars we got here, they're going to bring you some things. Also, what we want you to do is to call in. My wife is sending me over there. We can't take y'all one on the phone, but she's going to answer. We want you all to participate in it. If you have any kind of questions, we'd like for you to at this time, if you want to ask Doc some questions.
I got one.
I don't know how this applies, but I'm going to throw it out here, Doctor, since we have all these scholars here. I'm writing a book on the Civil Rights Museum, Kelly Ingram Park, 16th Street, A.G. Gaston Motel, and the slave shipping in Mobile. And in the process of correlating all of that, 1963, Martin was in Albany, Georgia. Shuttleworth called Martin and said, "Martin, we need you here Monday morning." He said, "I'm not doing any good in Albany, I'll be there." So he showed up on Monday morning, I think it was March of 1963. And my question is, I don't think that we had the wisdom to understand that the racist Bull Connor helped the whole process. That's how we got exposure, because of Bull Connor. He gave us the exposure that we needed. So would one of you speak to that in any way that applies to what we're talking about right now? How does that, that's fast forward until 63 from slavery all the way up until.
Well, I understand what you mean. You're saying that Bull Connor, because of the role that he played,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
misery that he brought to black folk,
Yes.
that he created an atmosphere that would allow us to succeed as we did. I, though, take the position that I don't give him credit for it. That's what I'm saying here. This is obviously not something that that Bull Connor should get any credit for. The credit should be given to those folk who pushed him out there. I remember I had a conversation with Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, and he was telling me about the time that they were getting ready to march, and he said that he had to show people that he was not afraid of Bull Connor.
Yeah.
So he called Bull Connor, said one Sunday evening, he said, "Bull, if you want to be a part of history, meet me at 19th Street and 3rd Avenue at 9:30 tomorrow morning." I said, "Well, why would you do that, Reverend?" He said, "I did that hard because I had to show Bull Connor and everybody else that we as black folk ain't scared of y'all. You know, we had to give our people courage." So in Bull coming, you know, I mean, he was going to be there anyway because he was going to try to stop it. But the credit goes not to Bull Connor, but to Fred Shuttlesworth. But you're absolutely right. If not for a Bull Connor, then those ills that we had to struggle with throughout our lives could not have been brought to the fore. And they were brought to the fore because of the activities of some.
And then another aspect of what we're dealing with too is, it seems like it'd be schism sometime. You know, in our class, this class, I welcome you all to continue to join this class, because we have a wonderful class, 8:15 in the morning, Sunday morning. But it seems like a schism sometime. But they're not personal. Let me give you an example of it. In the 60s, they decided, see, we had a hard time having meetings at different places because they don't, you know, some churches wouldn't let us have meetings at their church. But it was decided that the children, they were going to enlist the children. And this brought about a lot of arguing. I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of people, I was a kid in high school, a lot of parents, a lot of preachers did not want the children involved in the demonstrations. In fact, Reverend Porter was one of them. He told Bevan straight up, no, I can't let my children go out there because they're supposed to kill my children. This was how it was done, but it's the remarks. See, you can have these schisms, but that don't break us up from keeping our eye on the prize. You see, nobody fall out about it because he just had his opinion about it. And his opinion was that these kids gonna get hurt out there. But there was some people that was working in the radio field, a guy named Tall Paul, Shelley the Playboy. And all of these people, they had signals that they were seeing over the radio. And I remember when they said, well, we gonna march in Birmingham. Well, it came on radio, but see, at that time, you couldn't jump out there and catch the bus. We had to walk from Fairfield. When we got to Five Point West, everybody running back this way. You're going to have like DuBois and Booker T. Washington. Those things were there because one of them believed in a total trade and everything, and the other one was, look here, let's fight the power. So let's keep that in mind as we study this lesson.
We had a gentleman raise his hand a long time.
We've heard a lot of problems that we've been having as a race and as a people, but I would like to hear something in terms of solutions. I would like to have a discussion about how should we proceed as individuals and as a race.
You want to start? I can start.
Did you raise your hand?
Brother Clark, I sure appreciate that. That is a question. This is why we're sitting in here today. Doc and I, Reverend Parrish, it's how can we put this out here where everybody can be on the same page. You got all these different ways of transmitting things. We on conference call, we on Zoom, and Brother Timothy is taping this, which means that he can use this tape for his kindergarten classes. See, because the best way to express and to get this thing moving is through education. Is let people know that they are where they are because of where we came from. And the biggest reason why they are where they are, because we had gotten to a point where we wasn't afraid. See, fear kept us back. But when they came in, when we had things like Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, we had songs, we had We Shall Overcome, those type of things made us start thinking different. Well, the children we got today, they don't have that you know, they arrived. They haven't. So what we're doing.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I don't want you to think I'm disagreeing about it.
No, I'm finna move on real Paris. He seemed to be hot this morning.
So here's how I see it. I grew up in Sumter County, Alabama. I am a product of the Sumter County public school system, where my father was the chairman of the school board. My mother taught me 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science and social studies. My aunt was my assistant principal in junior high school. My aunt was my principal in high school. My aunt went on to be my superintendent. My uncle was my homeroom teacher 3 out of my 4 high school years. I grew up in a school system that wasn't segregated per se, but it was definitely divided. There were, out of my high school class of 88, there was 1 white student. 1. So now, every year we were taught Black history. From kindergarten, because not only was there not a lot of white students, there weren't a lot of white teachers. And to their credit, the white teachers that we did have were very progressive. Most of them. We still had some good old boys. Most of them. We had 1. The reason why I raised this is because what I got from the schools during the week matched what I heard in the church on Sunday morning. And now, my teachers all the way up, from K through 12, Alabama State, Stillman, Talladega, Tuskegee, A&M. They came from all of these HBCUs. So every single year we had to do a Black History notebook. Y'all remember those? We had to do them. Now, I look at the way that I grew up with the church and the school system and all. The community meetings were held at the church. I remember I was baptized at First Baptist Church of Livingston, Alabama. That's the way it was. So the school, the church, all of those areas where people were working in the community together, it was all reinforced. Now, because we have this division, and I look at the way my children were raised in Miami with a lot of diversity, but not with the type of upbringing that I had. It's the way forward is through the churches, as I see it, and I'm biased. Okay, I teach at an HBCU now. I'm a part of an African American church, and I sit on the board of a community foundation as well. Excuse me. So the way forward is through the church, because the church has networking in all areas of our lives.
But what I see, Ron Harris, you're right in everything you're saying. But we as black people, a lot of us, because we think we have arrived, we don't want to do that without church.
So
I want to say this. That's why you and I, that's what my thing about this Christian education thing we're doing in March. That's what came on my heart with that. And I'm about to cry. Because I see our people, even here at 6th Avenue, don't see what we're talking about today. You know, they don't see it. They don't see that we need to teach our babies where we came from and what they need to do and where we need to keep going, like someone said, where we're going in the future. Because if we don't, we're going to destroy ourselves. But I'm sorry.
So no, ma'am. But if I could just lay out this quick blueprint, then I've got to go get ready for worship. Here's what I see as possible, and of course this is just my view, but there are other ways to it. There's more than one way to reach our destination. The church has the networking, has the connections with all of those areas, with education, with commerce. So with colleges, with commerce, with high school education, with K through 8 education, all of that. The church has all those connections in every area of our activity. The church is connected. So how come churches don't start schools? How come churches don't start schools? Because now, if we're talking about CRT, they don't have a problem with it as long as you're in your schools. How come we don't have the churches start their own schools? And let me tell y'all something. What I wanted to do before I went through what I went through in Miami was to start an urban boarding school. There's governmental money to start urban boarding schools. Y'all, Bessemer is the is the murder capital of the world right now. The United States right now. Bessemer is #1 per capita in homicides. #1. Bessemer.
Had one yesterday.
#1 per capita. Bessemer. And all these churches everywhere, and we're not doing anything about that? We're not addressing that in any way? So now if we started an urban boarding school, we could take children out of that environment. We could require that the children, we could require that the parents of the children come to receive some type of skills training. Because why is the murder rate so high? One of the factors is that all of the steel, all of that stuff, all that commerce has shut down in Bessemer, where it used to be thriving. Now it's not. I'm not saying that that's the only factor, but that's one of the factors. Urban decay. So how come the churches don't come together? How come it has to be, 6th Avenue is going to do this and Mount Pilgrim is going to do that? How come we don't work together?
Jealousy and power.
So a way forward for me is I see that the churches come together, the churches decide, and the church has to take leadership in this because it's God's people.
That's right.
It's God's people. That's just my humble opinion.
I think he expressed that real well. Let me, Doc and I hate to say this to y'all, but we passed that stage right there. Your question, to answer your question, brother Clark, is that when we sat down and he and I talked about it, we prayed about it. We knew all of the pros and cons, we knew what was going to come up. We have been through all the questions that are going to be answered. To answer your question, I got 3 grandboys that's on this phone listening to Dr. Huntley today and listening to this thing. He got his grandchildren on there listening to it. We'll be here next week, we're going to listen to it. What we decided to do is we were going to go around all of the minutiae you got to go through to get a school established. We're gonna go around all the minutiae you got to go to get our own advertising out there. So far, I don't know how many people online. I see how many are here. I see that we have been successful. So this is how we're gonna do it. Desmond Tutu made a statement. You know, me and Doc talked about this. He made a statement about the river. You've heard these that song, Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Heard the song about the river. Tutu said, we're tired of pulling them out the river. We need to go upstream to see why they're jumping in. Doc and I sat around and we talked about that. The reason our people are where they are biblically and educationally is because ain't nobody, and you brought this up before last, we're not teaching them. So that's the purpose of this class. Dr. Huntley, you see how he let us talk this morning? Now he's not gonna be that generous the other 3 classes we're gonna have. He's gonna do some teaching. So let's all look forward to his next lesson, which he's gonna start. This is gonna go on through the month of February, and with Brother Harris' permission, we're not gonna stop. It might not be every Sunday, but it's gonna be a lot of it. What people fail to realize that black history is biblical history. Christian education is biblical history. You can tie everything he's gonna tell you all with this Holy Bible. So we appreciate, this is our first class. If we had a schedule that we wanted to go by, you about to do it tomorrow. Yeah. So we're gonna follow the schedule that we're by, because here's another reason why we're gonna do that, because we don't want nobody saying that we're running a school and we ain't teaching black history, we ain't teaching the Bible. So what we're gonna do from this point on is we're gonna start our Sunday school lessons. We got some reports that are gonna come in. Brother Harris is he's our teacher. He might have some things he might want to say about our Sunday school class. We're gonna keep things decent and in order, but he's gonna be teaching black history from now on, one way or the other. We got Brother Timothy in here, he's taping it, and we sure appreciate him doing that too. So at this time, we want to thank you all for joining us, and come back next week. You can get on Zoom too. I think she got the Zoom, you got the Zoom numbers for them to get on, Ms. Tina.
I do, but I don't have email addresses for most of these people who have called in today. If I had the email addresses, I would send them the link.
Okay, what we're gonna do, people out there in Radio Land, out there in the ether, we're gonna come back with the same thing. We got Zoom and we got conference call. We're gonna use both of them. At this time, we're gonna go and start our